Hey everyone! When you ride a bike, inevitably you get drawn to an idea of taking it to the track. And the first thing that comes to mind is a question of what should I do to the bike before I go there? And the short answer is you can do a lot. But today I want to talk to you about things that you can versus things that you should do with your bike. If you want to still ride your bike on the street, these will probably not work for you. Plus, if you want to actually race, most series have their own rules and regulations, and you need to check them out before you modify your bike. Okay, so first, you need to take all of the unnecessary things that you don't want to break because they're expensive to replace and they're just going to be in the way. So things like fairings, lights, turn signals, mirrors, passenger foot pegs, and passenger seat. They have to go. Next, you want to put race fairings on and protective engine covers. Race fairings are much lighter, cheaper, and simpler to replace if you go down. Plus, they're plain white, so you can put some stickers on it or even have a custom paint scheme if you'd like. That's really unnecessary, but a cool bonus. Engine covers are going to protect your engine if your bike slides. Because if you don't have those engine covers, you're going to scrape off the metal and the oil is going to come out right on the track. So having those engine covers is a difference between picking up the bike and riding again or going home. You could also get a rear subframe and a front bracket for your dash and the fairing, but that's definitely not mandatory. You want to replace your coolant with distilled water because, again, if you go down, you don't want to spill very, very slippery coolant all over the track. You need to safety wire your oil plug, oil filler cap, an oil filter, and a dipstick if you have one. Again, like with the coolant, you don't want to leave very slippery oil all over the track if you go down or if something gets unscrewed. And plus, you don't want to be that guy that spilled something all over the track and everybody has to wait for it to get cleaned up. Next, you'll want to improve your brakes. And for a start, just getting racing brake pads is going to be enough. They don't fade because they work at a much higher temperature. At a track, you brake a lot and you brake hard, so you generate a lot of heat. And these pads work really great in those conditions. However, they're not going to work well on the street because you don't brake so hard. So don't use them on the street. Tires are probably the most expensive part of racing. In fact, a $100,000 race bike is probably going to have the same tires as an old $3,000 Gixxer. A lot of people use race takeoffs, which are sold for roughly a third of the price of a new set. And those are fine if you're just starting out, but as soon as your lap times go down, it's best to get brand new tires. Regular road tires are okay as long as you go to the track rarely and ride on the street most of the time. But if you're getting serious about the track, you need track tires. Rear sets and clip-ons. This is something you don't absolutely need to have, but it's a good idea. First of all, they give you room for adjustment and you can get a little bit more comfortable on the bike. Secondly, they are much easier and cheaper to replace if you go down and bend them. Plus, at this point, you can start thinking about changing to a GP shift or reverse shift. This basically means that you push your foot to go up a gear and pull up to go down a gear. So, reverse shift. This pattern helps you shift when you are accelerating out of the corners, because when you're at a lean and accelerating out of the corner, it's much easier to push rather than find that lever and pull it up with your foot. Contrary to what a lot of people think, top speed is not the most important thing on the track. It's the acceleration out of the corners that counts. And there are a couple of ways that you can improve your acceleration. The expensive one, upgrading your engine, or a cheaper one, a much cheaper one, changing your gear ratio. As a rule of thumb, when you start riding at the track, it's a good idea to have a sprocket with 2 extra teeth on the rear and 1 less tooth on the front than the stock sprockets. This will reduce your top speed, which you probably won't reach on the track anyway, but this will also improve your acceleration quite a bit. And while you're at it, you can change your chain as well. So for example, if you have a 525 stock chain, change it to a 520. Just make sure to have 520 sprockets as well. This will reduce the rotational mass, which will improve your acceleration that tiny bit more. The suspension the bikes have these days is actually quite good. However, to work well, it needs to be serviced and it needs to be set up for your weight and ability. This can mean just replacing the oil and replacing the stock springs to the correct ones for your weight. It would also be a good idea to adjust your compression and rebound damping, but that's something you need to have a professional do. You'll find people who adjust suspension at most of the tracks. You can definitely go further and get yourself a set of cartridges and a race shock, but that's going to be expensive and you probably don't need that immediately. I personally think that aside from tires and your personal ability, a well set up suspension is something that is going to give you the best advantage at the track. Another thing to make you comfortable on the track is a quick shifter. I was amazed at how much my riding changed when I got one. A lot of the bikes nowadays have a quick shifter in stock, so if your bike doesn't, get one. I've seen a difference of as much as 10 miles an hour at the end of the straight in top speed between a bike with a quick shifter and without. And if you can have it blip on the downshifts, that's even better. That basically means that you will need to use your clutch only twice, when you start and when you come into the pits. It's such a small thing, but it's going to change so much about your riding. I personally think that adding horsepower to your engine is the last thing you want to spend your money on, for two reasons. Firstly, because you need to work on your skill, and more power is only going to terrify you even more. I'd suggest becoming comfortable with the bike first, and then starting to add more horsepower. Secondly, as soon as you add more horsepower, you reduce the lifespan of your engine. Track bikes already work at the limit. By modifying it, you're reducing its life even more. So the longer you can keep it at a stock form, the better. That said, if you actually want to add more horsepower, the easiest way is to make it breathe better. High flow air filter to breathe in and an exhaust to breathe out. What you need to keep in mind though is that you need to adjust your fuel mapping accordingly. It's not uncommon to see a drop in performance with new exhaust and new filter just because you're adding more air but not adding more fuel to go with it. So make sure you have the correct fuel maps for your upgrades. I think this is pretty much all you're gonna deal with first couple of years. Later on you can go nuts, changing cams and injectors, and you can get cooler brakes, fancy suspension, lightweight wheels. The sky is the limit, or your wallet to be precise, because it gets quite expensive really fast. But I want you to remember one thing. It doesn't matter how cool your bike is, if you're not fast, it's not going to be fast. But if you spend time and money on improving your ability, your skill, your style, your $3,000 Gixxer might be faster than a $100,000 race bike. Stay safe and keep them rubber side down.